Happy Wednesday to you. My name's Jorie. I'm the executive director of Friends of the Children Los Angeles, and I'm really excited to talk about our model, which is professionalized mentoring that we do for a really long time. We actually do it for 12 years with kiddos, but more specifically, a best practice that we've applied to our mentoring model is like, how do you integrate authentically lived experience, especially from a youth perspective, and how you're building systems change? I don't think this is going to be an exceptionally long presentation, but I also want to make space for like any questions that are asked. And I myself, as just a person, I think you kind of die on the vine if you don't innovate with the work that we do. And I'm all about sharing best practices, sharing tools, because I myself have had awesome experts in this line of work and that have been mentors to me and have been willing to kind of share some of their secret sauce. And so that's kind of just really the intention behind like my passion about sharing a bit about this work with you all, in which we're kind of titling Integrating Best Practices from Friends of the Children, a Proven Model for Systems Change. But feel free to also put questions in the chat if you have them. So really what we're going to kind of go over today is like how can you apply a recruitment tactic specifically with a population that you do serve on your end, and how can that add some depth or breadth to the work that you're doing around systems change initiatives, whether it's a long-term one like we're doing, or maybe it's short-term. And I really hope everybody will be able to walk away with an understanding of like how you can authentically do that, opportunities for you to discuss this, whether it's with your programs or your executive team or your leadership, but also incorporating like caregiver, which is really important to us on our model, caregiver feedback and lived experience that can also just foster deeper collaborative partnerships, which long-term for all of us is we just want to know how to serve families more effectively and families that are maybe at risk of being systems involved. Some of the key objectives today is I just want to introduce you to our model if you don't know of it yet. And what do we mean about professional mentorship? What does that mean? What are some of the strategies that we use? And maybe what are some ways that you can think about how mentorship could be applied to the work that you all do in the field? And is there a way to provide that ongoing support to the families you serve through a new lens of how you're hiring? And, you know, what are some takeaways with how you can deepen community partnerships when you talk about the work that you're doing, that are also looking to enhance public systems? Oops, I think I'm frozen. 1 second here. Is it changing to a slide?
No,
Oops.
I think you maybe bounced ahead too.
I did. Let me see. Target, yep, I'm right on track. Thank you. Target audience is awesome folks like yourself, whether you're currently working in child welfare or you're an educator or you're an organizer, you're an advocate, anybody that's really interested in effective youth engagement strategies, like really kind of designed this presentation with you all in mind. So just a little bit about Friends of the Children Los Angeles. We're actually part of a national mentoring movement. We've been around for 30 years. So there's 41 chapters across the United States that run a very similar model, and we all have the same mission. We want to empower youth that face some of the greatest obstacles through paid professional mentorship. And our approach is it's not short term, it's really long term. It's 12 years. So we enroll children between the ages of 4 to 6, and we walk alongside them for 12 plus years, no matter what. So we work with them all the way through high school graduation. We also run something that we call a 2-generation model, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with 2Gen, which was coined by the Aspen Institute. But it's really a model that's focused on not only supporting one-to-one the child, but also the whole family. So we do wraparound support for our families that are systems involved. And it's an evidence-based approach. We have 9 core assets. We really, kind of a tenet of our work is goal setting with our youth, which is done with the caregiver. And then that friend, this is Marquise that you'll see in a photo here, kind of works on those goals weekly with our kiddos. They spend 4 hours a week with every kid. So it's 2 hours in the home, 2 hours in the classroom, and they get 16 intentional hours a month. Our mentors, which we call a friend, they only have 8 kids on their roster, and that's intentional because this is all that they do. They're salaried to be a friend full time. In Los Angeles, when we started in 2017, we initially were invited by the Balmer Group and the Department of Children and Family Services because they were really looking for a model that, had a lot of ROI behind it, and that there's money served for prevention, but specifically money served, where there are less families that are entering care. And so like they really wanted to invest in mentoring. And so when we initiated it, it was really from a space of supporting child welfare hotspots. And at the time in 2017, and the data has changed over the last couple of years, which is excellent, but there were more young people in South Los Angeles between the ages of 4 to 8 that were entering foster care. And so the idea with our model is like we really wanted to be, we wanted to put a pin on the number of kids entering care. And we've had really incredible outcomes that I'm excited to share with you. But outside of Los Angeles, we're now also based in 4 other locations across LA County. So we're all the way up in Lancaster, we're out in Pasadena, and we're down in Long Beach, and then we will be moving out to San Fernando as well. And the whole idea is we want to really have a countywide initiative where we will be able to follow families because, as you know, if you're well versed with LA County, it's well over 4,000 square miles, which is huge. That's a really large geography, but families tend to bounce where they can find supportive housing. And so our friends need to be able to follow them. And if we cast a wider net geographically, we will be able to fully serve these families for the 12 plus years. And so at the moment, we're serving 320 children, around 1,200 families countywide. And what's, extra special about the work that we do is we hire from the communities we serve. So every new site that we open to serve additional families, it's really important to us that we hire friends from that community directly. And specifically how it relates to today is that we're hiring friends that have either been systems involved themselves. So they've been previously incarcerated, justice involved, or they've also experienced foster care. I myself am a young person that aged out of the system as well. And so what gets me so jazzed about this work and, why I love Friends of the Children too is like, I think we all can think about that consistent adult role model in our life that really changed the trajectory for us, whether it was a coach, it was a teacher, maybe again, it was a really close caregiver that was that person that showed up for you one-to-one. We do the same thing within our organization. But I think one of the special things about the work that we do and hiring folks that are lived experts is like they really are driving some very unique skills back to the organization and really driving a lot of our program goals and enhancing our efforts for how we're reaching out not only to new families to connect them with new mentors, but how we're talking about our work, how the policy that we're helping drive, not only at the state level, but at the county and city level. But I know a lot of us, are probably very intentional around cultural competency or cultural humility. It's much more authentic when you can do it when you're hiring folks that actually look and have the same experiences or similar experiences to the families that you're supporting. And long term, when you're hiring folks that have the lived experience, there's greater trajectory for program continuity, which we definitely need in order to actually do the work that we're doing for 12 plus years. These are some of our outcomes, which we're really proud of. So 83% of our youth go on to receive a high school diploma or they graduate. Although 50% of their caregivers did not have the support necessary to graduate, 93% of our kiddos remain free from the juvenile justice system. And in LA County, there's a lot of crossover youth. Between you enter foster care, you have a higher chance of entering the justice system. And where 60% of their caregivers had been impacted by the criminal justice system, 98% of our youth successfully wait to parent after their teen years. We think that's awesome. It's obviously a huge load when you take on becoming a parent at a younger age. And 85% of our caregivers started parenting during their teen years. 92% of our youth go on to enroll in post-secondary education, or what we call the 3 E's. So they're going on to employment, education, or enlistment. So this is what we're working towards on the long term, and these are some of our outcomes and why the county has been so encouraging of our work and helping us expand to new locations. So when we think about hiring lived experience folks, I think we often kind of get stuck on autopilot, kind of using the same methods when we're trying to engage young people with lived experience. Like we're maybe continually consulting with the same group of young people that are directly affected by decisions made. And I think although that's really well intended, that level of engagement makes it really difficult to achieve the level of inclusivity that I think a lot of our programs, especially when it comes to doing systems change, really require. And I think one strategy really to strengthen engagement efforts is formally hiring young people with lived experience as paid employees. Young people can really use their collective personal, their professional experience in their hired role. They can creatively contribute and improve your processes currently in place, and they can really connect with other young people. And when you're hiring young people with lived experience, it can bring new perspectives, it can bring diversity, it can bring innovation to a lot of your efforts. But it really does require some consideration when you're developing a hiring infrastructure. So some of these tips that I'm going to be sharing with you, I'm hoping you can take it away and bring it back to your work. So before you hire young people, just understand that young people have expertise and they possess really unique skills, not only related to their lived experience, but it really should not be, we really shouldn't be bringing young people to the table solely to be storytellers. Like we really have to think of them like any other professional whom you've hired for their expertise. And I think agencies can start building relationships and structures that can support recruitment of young people with lived experience. And so I think a big one is like, if you are able to connect with youth advisory boards, with community agencies, one that has been so critical for recruitment for us has been the Guardian Scholars Program that's oftentimes located within community colleges here or state colleges. These are organizations that provide the post-secondary, the financial supports for youth that are in care, and they are really tremendous pipelines for opportunities for recruitment. And if you're able to think about some of these supportive structures even internally for you of like additional mentoring, because you might be offering sort of a lily pad to youth that have never formally worked in social services, but they've been on the receiving end of it. You do want to think about, what is there a pipeline of promotion or mentoring that you can offer within your agency? When you're developing job descriptions, I think this is really critical. Kind of one of the main responsibilities is, obviously not just your job title, the purpose, kind of the required qualifications, but when you're thinking about a title, you still want to keep it professional. I think when you use something like youth ambassador, it often signals that a person is young and that they have the lived experience. I think if you can consider a professional title that really describes a specific skill set and then also needs to translate well on a resume. So like, for example, an engagement coordinator, if you're having them do a lot of outreach for youth recruitment, So I can provide more examples of that and sort of like associated responsibilities for young people with lived experience. But just kind of note that employment opportunities and responsibilities should always be tailored to a young person's experience level. But we do want to think about something that's going to provide them with a platform to grow, even outside of your agency. So sort of examples of employment opportunities that we've had within our agency, and I'm really excited to report that 89% of my staff are lived experts and are young people that have experienced the system and are now running the program from the inside out. Is like on a programs level, like we obviously have our mentors, but we have assistants, we have managers, directors, family engagement directors. These are folks that actually have gone and gotten their license, so they're LCSWs, LMFTs. We also pay for their ability to go to school. I think that is a really critical aspect of like best practices within an organization is how are we thinking about, if we're thinking about recruitment opportunities through these universities that make us competitive for hiring these folks, like how are we promoting professional development and helping them with their schooling? And so, of course, that's a bigger level and question around budget, but I think it really does set the tone when you're able to offer educational stipends or you're able to provide the opportunity to cover people's tuition, whether it's at like a threshold amount, but that also can, encourages, highly competitive applicants to apply, but continuous professional development. We have our CFOO is a person with lived experience. We have our fundraising external relations folks that have lived experience. And then also, we know a lot of contractors and trainers, and we make a point, just even from a philosophical standpoint, that any contractors that we work with and trainers, we are also looking for folks with lived experience within the system. After hiring, and this is a little bit what I've been discussing, is just really thinking about like, what's the long term for this person? Because, especially when you're doing work with kids one-to-one, it's kind of hard to not have the inner child work come out for a mentor specifically, because they're often seeing a ripple effect of what maybe they went through as a young person, and now they're seeing a child in a similar situation that they're tasked to support every week going through a similar situation. And so you really want to think about some of your employee assistance programs that you have situated within your organization, that the ability to mentor some of your junior staff that you're hiring with lived experience to help them understand some of the adverse trauma that they may experience as they're going through this work. I think it's a natural thing for it to kind of bring up, um, you know, familial history, because this work requires a lot of that. And I think we're tasked with some really heavy situations with supporting families that, have a lot going on in their life. You can never get back an onboarding experience. That's what I always say, especially with hiring. So how you're setting somebody up for success on day one needs to be really intentional. We always assign a mentor on day one for any of our staff coming in, so they can have touch points outside of like a supervisor, but somebody that's even in a different role, a different department, that can kind of guide them through the organization. Really is a very helpful retention tactic. And then just having super clear job responsibilities. I always say clarity is kindness. If you're writing something that's like super generalized and isn't specific enough, like that is makes people have to operate in a gray area, or I think can get people in a space, especially from a lived experience standpoint, where they're going beyond their scope. And then there is definitely risk where you have people taking on too much of a load emotionally that is really outside of their description. And we all know that that could, lead to, just people feeling really burned out. And that's the last thing that we need, especially when our families are reliant on us to be consistent with them. Oops, I think my thing is frozen again. I'm sorry. Don't know why. One second. Hmm. Sarah, can you see my page still?
Yeah, it hasn't switched. Oh, yeah, oh, you just went ahead. Maybe three. What I've noticed today, I think, I've noticed a little bit of a lag. So it might
Yeah.
just be about like hitting for the next slide and then give it a few seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I think, yep, this is the next one. So when we're thinking about building rapport with young people who have been hired, I think it's really important when you're hiring young people, you really need to, that should be kind of navigated with consideration about tokenism. Um, Tokenism is a performative action that really relies on the presence of a person with a certain background without entrusting meaningful duties or responsibilities to that individual. It's really critical to avoid tokenism, not by focusing solely on a young person's lived experience, but rather on all the unique skills and perspectives that they can contribute to the work. Authentically engaging with young people and recognizing that most of them are still navigating their lives while in or after exiting foster care or the system. It's super imperative to kind of take an empathetic approach that helps propel that young person's professional career, and just recognizing that lived experience by nurturing professional skills, equal partnership and trust are sort of the critical tenets. And so if you're kind of thinking about those tips, it's really, important to consider when you're building rapport with young people. And really just creating a positive workplace culture that is safe, that really promotes work-life balance, that offers healthy boundaries. Like at Friends LA, it's super, a super easy thing that you can do. And I think most of us kind of operate either in 410s, but like that helps with work-life balance. Every seventh Friday is a roster day off. We actually call it a freebie Friday. We give our staff quarterly reset days, without the stigma of calling it a mental health day. But I think if you're putting some of these things in place, it definitely fosters a positive workplace culture. Um, I think another thing that's huge, and I've been kind of slowly seeing it over the years, is like really addressing young people by their preferred name, their name pronunciations, their pronouns. Offering those flexible schedules, I think, is critical. Your employee benefits, I think it's super important to have, obviously, insurance benefits, having a 401k so these young people can start building that. The paid time off, and just providing timelines and advance notice on tasks and deadlines. Um, and kind of implementing a promotion pipeline has been a really successful measure for us. Like I've had friends that started with us in 2017 and are now our chief program officers. So if you can build a pathway to promote professional development, this really ensures that there is a way for young people to be promoted if they are hired into an entry-level role so that they can succeed and grow as young professionals. Another thing that's really has been awesome and is important to the work that we do, because we're oftentimes in a lot of county or city spaces, or we're meeting with DCFS professionals, is we're bringing our friends to these spaces. We're bringing our lived experts, and like they are really serving as the advocates within these MDT meetings, specifically IEP meetings with caregivers, really leveraging their background and really kind of creating a lot of um, the presentations that we're holding out in the community, some of the materials and the collateral that we're presenting. It really kind of goes through our team. And also, just this seems so basic, but showing a general interest in who these young people are outside of their lived experience. Really, a core asset of the work that we do is belonging, and it's a core asset that we work on with our youth. And it's something that we also stand by as an organization. If you're able to promote a sense of belonging, expressing interest and learning about not only their identity, their skills, their hobbies and goals, like it really does go a long way. And when you're valuing their voice, in which we have not only employee engagement surveys that are created by our staff. It's much easier to implement and get authentic feedback on what they think needs to change, whether it's programmatically or it's at, an operational infrastructure level. Like I know that some of these things seem almost a little bit scary at times because we have other stakeholders or we have board members that kind of set the goals for the organization, but bring your staff into these board meetings, bring them into your ambassador board meeting, value their voice, their experience, their expertise. And once you build rapport with a young person, you can better match their expertise with the needs of what you're doing, at your mission level, thereby kind of helping that young person maximize their skill set. And really include them in the discussions about your goals, really allow young people to be part of the decision-making process and how they could kind of best contribute to helping your organization achieve the practice or the policy change. And I'm really, really proud of Friends of the Children. I'm blown away by some of the outcomes that we've been able to have with our families. So like I mentioned, we have over 320 children in the program. Not single one of those kids has had an additional run-in with child welfare. That is incredible. And I know it is because of our mentors and the work that they put in day out with our youth and families. And we want to be really good partners to our child welfare folks. But we know that a lot of our families have a lot of trauma when interacting with child welfare. And part of what the work that our lived experts on the Friends side are also providing is like bridging the gap with trust there, but also making sure that we're really helping those families thrive on a holistic level where they aren't having additional touch points with child welfare. There isn't another call made to the hotline. So that is really when it comes to just the work that we're doing in practice that we've been able to do on a professionalized mentoring model. I think a lot of these tips are things that you could use as a resource and kind of bring back to your agency. And I do think like up front is kind of thinking about really informative like onboarding materials that are like young people friendly, and really kind of building a sense of partnership that can help ensure that they understand their role. And just always remember that young people with lived experience have really important expertise. They should be treated as professionals. And I really hope that like some of these tips, there's a way to really, show not only your commitment to the young people and the families that you serve, but just as much too, like we we want to serve more kids with mentors, but I also want to see a lot of these kids as they go through our program to become mentors. And so I think really at the heart of systems change is like, how are you getting more people that have been, from a deficit standpoint, impacted by some of these systems? How do you change the trajectory where they can change them from the inside out? And I do think it can be hiring of lived experts, especially young people. So I do want to take a moment and offer a point of questions for anybody. But that is a bit about our work and our model. And the floor is open for if anybody has questions too. Oh, I think I see Elizabeth Stewart.
Yes, I was wondering, there was a slide that was just up and it went out with, I guess, with the contact information and your email.
Okay. Oh yeah. Let me, I think I should be able to attach a file. Yes, I can. And I'll just put my full PowerPoint in here for you. And it does have our info in it.
Thank you so much.
I
Appreciate
didn't say this because I don't know whereabouts y'all are from, but like we are rapidly enrolling youth at all times. It's just a rolling basis. So if there's a family that you think would qualify, that you're interested in getting them matched with a mentor, like we welcome referral opportunities as well. And, if there are organizations that we're not partnered with, we work with over 60 of them. Drop your info in the chat because oftentimes families reach out to us and they're like, hey, there's a risk that I'm going to be evicted. Like, what do I do? Who do I reach out to? We don't like to just link them with anybody or here's a number. Like we work on having formalized partnerships I would say like a hot referral, not a warm referral, somebody that we know on the inside and not just one person deep, multi people deep that we can connect them to. And so I know that there are really impactful organizations that are part of this convening. And if you think it would be great to connect and further discuss how we can support the mutual families that we serve, please reach out to me. And I'd love to connect you with our Director of Community Partnerships too. And then I'll also just put my name in the chat too. And you can email me personally here as well. Any thoughts or questions?
When it comes to training, you described, some of the work. I do work with folks with lived experience here in Santa Clara County. First time I've heard about your program, but one of the things that I always think about with the folks with lived experience that I work with, as well as myself, I have lived experience foster care, is that leap between this is my experience. I'm working with folks, and there's triggers and potentially unresolved,
Trauma.
hurts, wounds, trauma from, and now you're helping. So, can you talk a little bit more about the training or training that you kind of provide for the folks that you hire, and how do you really assess if this person is healthy enough or healed up enough to be able to do the
Yeah,
work?
that's a really great question. So every new friend, every new individual that comes into Friends of the Children has to go to something called a new friends training. It's a 40-hour boot camp that kind of
Oh,
tells them the ins and outs of like the fidelity of the model. But what we do as a best practice is there's monthly training for all staff, but our line staff, like our mentors, we're constantly working on skill development. So it's like we'll do like motivational interviewing 1 month, and then we're talking about like we had families in Pasadena that were impacted by the fires. It's like, how do we talk about like disaster relief preparedness. And so I think like there's a lot of skill development that happens monthly, like really teaching practical skills, like not only around communication and advocacy, but like just emotional regulation. Like if we're
mm-hmm,
trying to make sure that our youth in our program are emotionally regulated, and then we aren't as adults, we're not really modeling what we're hoping our young people can embody. Um, I think when it comes to the folks that we hire, and it's a pretty intensive hiring process. There's 6 interviews. So beyond just like a skills assessment and multiple references, they also have to sit down and they're interviewed by a caregiver and a mentor. We do a lot of data, like third-party research. We require that they read a lot of our data and then kind of tell us, like, what do you think the story is of this young person, like over the last 3 years? Like, what are their outcomes? We kind of want to be able to render, like, how do they understand case notes before they get trained on, like, how to input them or what they think this kind of trajectory of youth outcomes is. And so we try to like foster at the get when we're interviewing people, like their sense of awareness of how they can apply their background to the work that we do, like the fidelity of the model. Um, but I think like a big part is like the peer support. So like I mentioned, like upon entry into our work, everybody gets their own mentor, regardless of department. And I think those peer supports, we call them peer support, not specialists, but just like peer supports. And within the first 90 days, that peer support that also kind of loops back to me, loops back to their supervisor, is really kind of creating that safe and supportive environment to also gauge like, how is this work impacting you emotionally?
mm-hmm,
And I'm happy to say that we've never had somebody have to go, I actually can't do this work, I need to leave within their first 90 days. We've found ways to retain people if they have, we've kind of come to the conclusion with them that this is too hard of a job. This is something that's like triggering for me. So it's like we try to find something on like a program admin side that can
Mhm.
keep them within the work of, partially like indirectly doing direct services, and still providing the resources and support to the families that we serve, but isn't something that is going to disable them from being their best selves. And the last thing we want to do is create a space that's going to make
Yeah.
people feel like they're overwhelmed and that they can't work in social services. And so we do kind of provide those like lily pads of support. It's just my org chart's really big. And the idea is that I want to retain people. I want to keep them. I want to build a community, and part of building a community where it's like it's heavy on the program side, especially administratively, is it also builds a community for the families we serve. So if there is a transition, and we've had friends that have left that have become social workers or they've become educators and they go on to bigger and greater things, it's not a complete loss of like that mentor moving on or that program director or that LCSW. But those first 90 days are really critical, and we do tag them with a peer support specialist that's really kind of gauging with understanding with their supervisor of like, is this a good fit? Like, where do they need more skill development? Is there anything that's like a red flag on the emotional side? But like, we've never had to, you know, politely help somebody find something else within their first 90 days. Like they're not a good fit. We look for another opportunity for them to grow, maybe laterally.
Mhm.
But that's sort of
Good.
our philosophy.
Okay, I definitely
Yeah.
want to email and reach out to you. Are you in the Bay? You have an extension or a program here in the Bay Area?
We do. We have a sister site in San Francisco, and then we have a new one that just opened in Sacramento. And then we're opening one in San Diego, and then we just opened one in Coachella Valley.
Okay, but not okay. So San Francisco's closest
Yeah,
Bay.
Sac
Okay,
and San Francisco, Coachella Valley, and then San Diego is actually in the summertime. By August, that chapter should be open too.
okay, great. Okay, I'll just definitely reach out to you.
Yeah, great.
Talk to you some
Look
more.
forward to it.
Thank you so much. Great
Thank
presentation.
you. Any other questions?
My question was kind of along the same as hers, because
Yeah.
it says that you guys work with the kiddos for 12 years, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing, first of all. But how, like, if someone does move on, like you said, like they go
Mhm.
on to become a social worker or get their
Yep.
license or something, how is that transition for the kiddos if they were the ones assigned to that mentor?
Yeah, we have a pretty extensive closure process. And when upon hiring, every friend, specifically every mentor, is required to give us a 3-year commitment. Sometimes that's, there have been things that have happened for people, whether it's like medically or some sort of family emergency, and they can't make the 3-year commitment. But I am really proud to say that our longest friend has been 8 years. Our retention is 5 years for a friend. Traditionally, for kiddos at age 11 and 12, when they kind of hit adolescence, we actually transition them to a different mentor that has more experience on the youth development side, that can work on like, more like post-secondary work, get them excited or, encouraged around college, school, employment opportunities. We have a big partnership with WEDAC specifically, but like the closure experience is something special that's really kind of designed by the kiddo and the friend. Caregiver, also when it comes to like matching with a new friend, is heavily involved in that process. So like finding that mentor, matching again, not only based off of location and maybe background, but also like interests, experiences, how they want their child to grow with this new mentor. And so that caregiver has a lot of input on finding that next friend. But it's a co-designed experience for closure between the mentor and the youth. And sometimes I mean, they're really fun. I mean, I've only been to a couple because we haven't really had many friends transition. Um, but it ends up becoming a full-on party where the whole organization comes out to kind of support the growth of this friend that's leaving, but also wrapping around support and something that's fun that also doesn't feel so scary for the kiddo, knowing like, oh, this consistent friend that's been in my life, weekly, sometimes daily, is leaving. What does this mean? And we also, we have lots of events that happen quarterly. And so we have a great alumni group of like either former friends or ambassador board members. And we make it a point to, we call them friend zones, but bring all these people back where families can also have reconnection with some of these people that have moved on to bigger things too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
So are you contracted with the Department of Family and Children's Services there in
So
Elk County? Yeah, where do you?
yeah, we get funding through the Department of Mental Health, and then our referrals come in through DMH, DCFS, DPSS, community-based organizations, and then school districts. So we actually partner with over 20 different school districts, and they make direct referrals. Community agencies, like a friend of mine was on here from Pacific Clinics, like the Pacific Clinics will make a referral. So it's kind of a wide range, but we do get support, financial support through DMH and DCFS. But we're heavily privately funded and individually funded too.
Okay.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, it was really great to share space with you all. Thank you so much for your questions too, Elizabeth, and I think it was Karina. Would really just encourage you to reach out if you have any other thoughts, questions, want to connect further. But thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and hopefully can see some of you in person tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.